2 words. That's all it's going to take to completely change the direction of ARK and where we believe ARK 2 or the next DLC will be taking us. 2 very short words. And those 2 words are Arat Prime. Some users over on the forums have been decoding these floating messages. Some of them are just jumbled up words and seem to be incomplete sentences. However, some of them provide information on a place called Arat Prime, which supposedly is on the other side of the planet, and there is no longer a signal or response being received from a facility so far away. However, before I jump into all of that stuff, because we've got one hell of a rabbit hole to jump down, people, I want to show you this thing because I thought this was pretty badass. I didn't realize there were any dev kit assets actually available to modders right now, but apparently there are. And they made a corrupted Indominus Rex, which is super, super badass. And I just wanted to show you guys this because I'm a sucker for the Indom. If you watch my videos, you know I love the Indominus Rex and everything about it. Indoraptor, not so much, but Indominus Rex is the star here, and I absolutely love how this thing looks with its corruption and the actual blue that it has, the cyan. It's not the deep purple and pink and stuff. No, this is straight up just completely mutated into a cyan, which is super nice. It doesn't really give this guy anything super special or like any new attacks. He still has his basic camouflage, normal attack, you know, all that. He still does the roar as well, which is pretty nice. But all in all, it's basically just a skin / model rework, so that's basically that. I just wanted to show you guys. I don't know if you follow the Indominus mod or not, because I don't really play modded stuff that much. I think that's all Riot's alley, so you're probably going to see that on his series, actually, once he finds out this thing is a thing, unless he's already done it. I don't know. Let me know if Riot actually knows about this thing. And if not, you should definitely tell him about the corrupted Indominus Rex, because I'm sure he's going to be all over that. Anyways, let's move on to the actual meat and potatoes of the video. I did a video previous to this one on the storyline of ARK. I highly suggest you watch this before you jump into this video, because this is going to be branching out off of that video. I can't stress enough you check out this video first. The link will be in the description of the video, and just trust me on this, okay? If you want to understand where the DLC is going, where ARK 2 is going to most likely come from, and the next expansion, if they go that route, you need to know the foundation. If you already know the foundation, well, then you're half the battle's gone, guys. So let's just jump into this. All of the following information was compiled by a person called Felix. Felix, if you see this video, well, thank you very much for your email. It was super helpful, and this tied in a lot of dots that I've been trying to connect in myself, but I'm not really that versed in history and stuff. So yeah, basically that. We had a number of questions in the last video that I feel we can answer now. This is all thanks to Felix and their detective work. So one of the questions we faced were Helena and her ability to synchronize with the mechs so quickly. Really anything. It was like her nervous system was enhanced and infinitely better and more capable than her counterparts. Helena's sync rate is why she is able to see the images discovered from the artifact just from looking at it. She has a more highly developed nervous system which is required to ascend to a Homo Deus, as she can process the stupid amount of information required. This enables her to connect with the artifact, and the system uses this connection to send her images of what needs to be done. I assume if you want to bring science into it, by being able to entangle itself through quantum mechanics with her brain, showing what had happened and what would happen if the steps needed were not taken. In the last fight, she uses the artifact, slotting it into the implant that begins the transformation. Now, for those of you who don't know, Helena and May were cornered by the King Titan. At least we believe it was the King Titan. This ultimately led to Helena taking the artifact that May had hid from her and ultimately throwing it into her arm, and, you know, basically whatever happens, happens, but this is our final chance, and it actually saved their asses for a bit. During this period of time, Helena, however you want me to say it, actually goes unconscious. She's just no longer responsive, and, well, that's the unfortunate truth of it. She wakes up mildly, you know, kind of mumbling things, talking about the images, and then she goes back to sleep. She's passing on, and her body is barely hanging on to any resemblance of her memory, basically. So it's up to May to bring her to the tomb. For those of you who don't know, this tomb is actually located inside the forest biome, surprisingly. And you go in here, there's some secret areas that you need to go through, and you end up in the Ascension tomb, the final tomb that man is able to use and mankind created to ascend to their Homo Deus final form. If you are successful, however, you will find this area, and this is the area Helena, however you want me to say it again, was taken while she was dying, going through her final ascension. This is the machine that she was hooked up to and ended up digitizing her mind into a next, I guess, greater being, or whatever you want to call it. Homo Deus is probably the best fitting word for it, though. Felix goes on to say, May rushes her to the tomb on Helen's direction, as the process without the tomb to monitor and control it will end in Helena dying. Diana manages to make it back because of Helena's ascension. She was the one who waits. However, she was unfortunately unable to resurrect Santiago and the others, as their souls had already faded away, and I was only able to create lifeless shells. It's actually kind of funny because I believe it's note number 27. There is a reference to this. So it turns out it was number 27, but also number 28. And I unfortunately didn't realize that until I was too far into it. And well, basically we're back in time now. But regardless, number 27 does point towards the lifeless shells. And number 28 kind of moves into this as well with the Homo Deus and their ascension. The number of sleepers is few compared to the souls who faded. I told you about them, the ones I lost to death before I could overcome it. Even when I tried to create exact copies of them, the memories wouldn't take. All I could mold were lifeless shells, empty statues of flesh. At least death is a natural end. They didn't suffer when they found the void. Not like him. He who thought down was up and descended a ladder into madness. I could see him in those depths, a twisted place where torment and euphoria are reversed. He brought that fate upon himself, but even so, I'm glad you put an end to it. Now, the statement, their souls had already faded away and I was only able to create empty shells, whatever, lifeless shells, that comes into Helena and basically cloning, how she created humans. This goes on to say, I'm grateful for your company too, very grateful. I know I've been rambling. This conversation is quite one-sided. I'm just glad for the chance to speak to another being, if only through these shards of thought. As I've said, time and I are at odds, and I have no idea how long I've been waiting here alone, completely alone. My elders had lost their identities before I came to be. There were no others to teach me what I am, no one to speak to, no one to know. There will never be, for the path was shut down behind me. No one else will rise to these heights from the tomb of man. I am certain that is for the best, but selfishly, I sometimes wish it weren't the case. There are some other notes as well explaining how she tried and failed to bring people back in the past with their identities, their memories, because again, their soul had passed on. Picking up where Felix left off, this is why I think quantum entanglement is a big part of the ascension process. The data was there for the bodies, but the minds attached had drifted and faded away and could not be reconnected to their physical bodies. After Helena defeats death, bringing Diana back, she creates a new breed of survivor, us, giving them the task of killing the Titans to drop the element toxicity rating. Diana and May die before our arrival, unfortunately, but not before killing hundreds of the Titans that were roaming the Earth, leaving us with just 4 to kill, including the King. Now we know that it is Helena guiding them and us from the beginning. These events in the Explorer notes were a long time before our arrival. In fact, without Helena, player characters wouldn't exist. We know from the end cutscene when we see Helena appear before us as a Homo Deus. A little bit of trivia for you guys real quick, because in my last video I had mentioned that there were Explorer notes that were actually removed from being canon, And, well, those are... Little is known that Nerva originally had an explorer note on the island that described his little hut being broken into on the first night and him being murdered in his bed and waking up on the beach. It was removed just before early access because it made no sense when they had finalized the story and had Helena create the Resurrection Protocol within the ARK control systems. That's more or less one of the Explorer notes that were recalled, and they basically retconned the information provided in those. Now, we can move on because there is more pointing towards an actual story. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. I'm not personally. However, the basic story itself, minus the element, is based off a specular book called Homo Deus, A Brief Vision of Tomorrow. I remember seeing a documentary about this, actually, like something about it like a year ago, I think, when I was researching this stuff. And that was a sequel to A Brief History of the Human Race, and was an expansion on the last chapter in the first book, Where Do We Go From Here? You can find free PDFs everywhere, as it is a very respected book in academic circles. Okay, that's kind of cool. So if you guys want, you can check that out after, and you might learn more about potentially where the ARK storyline is going. Worst case, if it doesn't, you get a great read out of something. I remember briefly Santiago had mentioned there was most likely political issues with the scientific engagement or scientific something like that caused a war anyways, most likely. Issues with society, politics, and technology as a whole that caused the war in the beginning. But Felix goes on to explain that politically and socially, we are not as advanced as we are with our technology. We will destroy our own planet through our inability to cooperate on a large scale, and that though the same technology we will focus on creating, in this case floating arks, to house the surviving population, and will move on to defeating issues such as illness and defeating death itself, the creation of the Homo Deus was their prototype for eternal life. The idea that these construct humans would be able to survive for thousands of years, monitoring and manipulating the system as required. Sadly, the process was flawed and did not enable their minds to have that same longevity. When Helena ascends, she finds all of the other Homo Deus have lost their identities and self-awareness. They had become nothing but simple programs chugging along behind the scenes. And that was actually in the Explorer note I had just read to you. This continues on answering another question that we were wondering about, and that question was, what happened to Earth's rotation, and what's up with everything that's happened? Because originally the theory was tidal lock, and I actually explained tidal lock a while ago. It's basically the planet in rotation and stuff syncing up, and it's basically one side of the planet rotates and moves at the same speed, and it basically keeps one side of the planet on a certain point. So, for instance, orbiting and stuff. You get, I probably sucked at explaining that. I'm so sorry. Felix's take on this was, if you're wondering why the Earth lost its rotation, the element, when it had expanded to a high enough level and gained a form of intelligence, divided through the Earth's crust and stole all the kinetic and heat energy from the molten core to aid in its replication, destroying the magnetic field and slowing the rotation to nil. Element is an alien resource. Humanity never created element but discovered it after it had fell to Earth. Helena discovered and talked about this after her ascension through the riddles, which I actually went through in my previous video as well, that it fell from the heavens onto the garden Earth and poisoned it, which again, I went through on my last video, so I really hope you watch that before you watch this. Santiago is not wrong with what led to the current saturation, humans and war, but Helena does say she is not sure if element was always a malignant disease or if it evolved to be like that after her ascension, after falling to Earth, near the end of the war. Finally, the war for Earth. Element Rockwell is alive and now the central control node for the element, like the King Titan was. The arks purified the Earth, but one of the arks were infected. Aberration. Aberration didn't have Nameless until Rockwell's ascension. After Rockwell's ascension, the element had something to use as a brain. And then Rockwell began manipulating the element of aberration the same way Homo Deus can manipulate the system. We know the cast of the original story did not succeed in killing Rockwell from their second group. In their notes, all of them die except for Imam, whoever that is, who can confirm that aberration has a master and its name is Rockwell before his eventual death. I'm not familiar with this person here, but I'll go with it for now. They have always said that the third DLC would be a accumulation to the ARK storyline. That was interpreted incorrectly for a long time as being the end of ARK, when instead it is the end of us being in the dark. Now is the beginning of a new chapter, the Earth storyline. Next DLC, in my humble opinion, will be Arat Prime. It's mentioned in the notes as a signal emitting from a facility that is situated on the dark side of the planet. I believe that Arat is the contracted version of Ararat, however you say that. That is the mountain that Christians believe Noah's Ark came to rest after the Great Flood. This should give you a good jump start to what the lore will be for the next chapter of the story. Sincerely, Felix Sullivan, Fallen Knight. That's actually kind of funny. Completely unrelated, Felix, but the Fallen Knight. I don't know if you played RuneScape or not years ago, but I remember there was a player called the Old Knight, and they were one of the top players. That's actually kind of funny. It just made that come into my mind for no reason. From what I understand, the Old Knight passed away from cancer or something like that, and he was in a huge race against someone called Zizima or something like that to be the #1 player, and Zizima came in on top because the Old Knight had passed away, I think, but they were both friends and all that stuff. And just random trivia, that's what that hit me with just then. I myself went onto the forums to try and find some stuff about Arat Prime, and unfortunately there's no one talking about this. This one person called Rocket Noodle, and I'm not even going to try and say that, said, "Hi guys, so I've been decoding the messages found all over Sanctuary, and I noticed a few talking about Arat Prime and how it has gone silent. Does anyone know or have a theory about what or who Arat Prime may have been? I've searched the internet but found nothing on it. Just really curious about it." And then Dylan replied, spoilers by the way, it's in the Extinction Explorer notes. And if I remember correctly, it's another test site on the other side of the planet, at least from what I remember. And then they go on with the Christianity lore and stuff like that, and Noah's Ark and things like that too, so on and so forth. Regardless of what happens, we now this is like, I'm pretty sure this is my last video on the storyline of ARK besides the One Who Waits logs. I have to do an entire video on those to try and connect all of the dots in some kind of master video that's going to take, I'm sure, 2-3 days to edit, because this one isn't going to be nearly as edited as the other one, but you get the idea. Regardless, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section about what you've already learned from this video. Yes, I know Naruto roasted me or tried to roast me. I might respond, I might not. I don't know. The guy blatantly lied through his teeth. Yes, Naruto, you lied through your teeth. And there's one specific point that you lied in, and I will point that out, and it's going to be a bad time. Oh, that's my crotch. Oh my god, it actually pokes through. Am I going to get demonetized? What? That's not okay. Oh no. Oh, ARK, why? Anyways, guys, that is it. I hope you enjoyed it again. Leave a like if you did. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section as always. And, oh man, I have so much research ahead of me. Oh, all right. I will see you in the next video.